Good morning, and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. It is Friday. We're going to talk about the Hearts game this weekend. We're going to talk about the headache that Brendan Rodgers has, and it's a good headache to have. It is a good headache to have. I'm just watching. Um, Interesting. Might watch that on Sunday. I'm just watching the game that come up for Sunday. Anyway, before we get into the video, let's dive into the comments. Say who is here this morning. And it is Friday. Don't usually go live on a Friday morning, but it's yes. So Paul Emery's in the house. David Lamont's in the house also. We'll wait till some more people come on. But Celtic have been. It's been said. It has been said by a player, well, an ex-player, and it's an ex-player that personally I've got a lot of time for. Um, and it's an ex-player that he did it at all levels, you could say. Owen Hargreaves, he's been talking about the one and only Celtic £11 million signing and Arnie Engels. And he reckons that Celtic are onto a good thing here with the player. He says that Celtic will be soaring towards bagging a £40 million transfer fee for one of the best players, the former England international, who did it with Bayern Munich and he did it with Manchester United. He said the fact that Celtic got 30 million from Brighton for the one and only Matt O'Reilly, when you look at that deal, and the total package is £30 million. But when you look at that deal and you're looking at inflation over the next few years, the price of everything has went up. And he reckons it's about time that transfer fees in Scotland will also go up. And he's been raving about the fact that the way Celtic are running the club. Um, Tavis staying. Oh my god. Oh, the meltdown this weekend. I've got a couple of videos lined up, a couple of short videos lined up actually, for from the meltdown that was after the Glasgow derby. But anyway, do you think do you think that Celtic are on a good thing with Arnie Engels? And let's do the poll this morning. Where is it? Um, Start the poll. Well, there's the poll this morning. Do you think that Celtic will ever get £40 million for a player? Because Owen Hargreaves, I've got a lot of time for Owen Hargreaves. You've got to remember that when he played his football in Germany, Alex Ferguson had been trying to get him for years. Fergie knew a player. Let's not deny it, right? I mean, I know that he was one of them, and he took when his Man United team come up here. He took the team bus past Govan and where he grew up and all the rest of it. Uh, but he had an eye for a player, did Fergie. And Owen Hargreaves, let's face it, he was a fantastic player. He knows a player or two. He played in Germany. He knows that Arne Engels was, for the price that Celtic paid for him, the Germans must have thought a lot about him. A lot about him being such a young player, wanting so much money for him. But can Celtic, the question is this morning in the poll, can Celtic, do you think that Celtic will ever get £40 million? 40 million for a player. And when you look at it, what we got for the one and only Matt O'Reilly, the total package was 30 million. In 4 years' time, 3 years' time, in 3 years' time, can we get £40 million for someone that's a little bit younger? Well, he's younger just now. He's what? He's only turned 21, and Matt O'Reilly's what, 23. So he's 2 years younger than Matt O'Reilly. Can Celtic produce enough out of the player? And ultimately, it's going to come down to the Champions League. Can the player turn it on in Europe enough for the big guns in Europe to come calling for him, and make him, can Celtic turn him into that £40 million player? Bernardo could be 40 million. Said Richard Smith. Let's dive back into the comments. And says Pork Chop Express is in the house. Says morning guys. Danny is in the house. Says morning Baz. Obi Boy says sup Baz and troops. Thomas Hanlon says morning Baz. Leo Mills is in the house saying morning troops. Sean Beers in the house. Good morning, happy Friday. Paul Baird's in the house. Sam Max in the house. James Clark's in the house. David Bell's in the house. James in the house. You'll never walk alone. 40 million. Says you'll never walk alone. 1888. Joseph says, morning all. Tavis Stain. Well, just watch out for the short videos that's already preloaded to come out over the weekend. Using up some content and regurgitating some stuff just to remind them before they play on Sunday that they are shite. Anyway, Liz Donnelly's in the house. And morning Baz. Dave Houslop, morning Baz. Tam Max talking Porky. Only time will tell, sells Paul Baird. Paul Baird. Paul Baird's always the voice of reason. And it is true. Only time will tell if we can turn them into. I mean, we paid good money for them. They've got a 20% sell-on clause. So Celtic and the Germans must think he's going to go for decent money, because you don't sell him a player for 11 million, put a 20% sell-on clause, and then expect him to go for like 15 to 20 million, do you? Realistically, they've obviously had the discussions. I mean, they'll have future valuations over what they think they can get for players. All clubs will do that. They'll look at the modern day football. It is all about assets, and Celtic have bought an asset that they think that they can convert into a bigger asset. Is Owen Hargreaves wrong saying that it could be a £40 million total transfer? If you're getting 30 million for Matt O'Reilly, let's just see what he can do in for Celtic in the league and ultimately Champions League. Paul. Richard Smith says, good morning. I hope you have a fabulous Friday. Spacey says, hail Baz and Stephen Johnson. I'm not Stephen Johnson in the house this morning. I'm not seeing Stephen's comment as yet. How's the head day, Baz? It's fine. I only had 3 drinks. But you got to remember, Spanish measures are about 10. I can remember getting a drink when I was home. And I got a vodka and I was like, it just tastes like water. Where's the vodka? It's like Jesus. But Spanish measures are a little bit more. It's a 7-second pour over here, still in deep dark Spain. Pork Chop says Tavernier will be off in January, so they'll be so far behind. It'll be the perfect time for him to leave. Paul Bell says, hail, hail. Stephen, what does the Belgians think of Engels? I haven't heard how much they rate him. I'm not going to. I don't know actually, but I would trust I'd trust Germans over the Belgians when it comes to football. Um, let's be fair. Let's be fair. If the Germans rate them, that's all that you really need to know. Because I mean, Belgium's done okay under Martinez, but yeah, the Germans know a player or two. The fact that German football over the last 5 or 6 years have been buying up as many youngsters as around the world as around Europe. They're buying. I mean, the amount of youngsters that went from England over to Germany with the knowledge that the Germans are going to sell them back to England with overinflated price tags. You know, there's a thing. They know a thing or two. Carly says, "Hail, hail, my peoples." Bernardo could be the next £40 million player, or could be the £40 million player. Says Richard. Liz Donnelly says, "Hi, Stephen. Leon Miles is in the house. Bernardo is going to be standout player this season. I hope so. I really do. It's going to be tough in that midfield this season. I think that if anybody's going to up their game this, we all know that what Paolo can do. We got a glimpse of it towards the end of last season, and in the Scottish Cup, he's the one that picked up the second half. He grabbed the second half by the throat and made sure that we won. We won it. If there's any player that you're going to see improve this season and take his game to that next level, because he wants the transfer away, is going to be Rio Hatate. And where do you fit in Rio Hatate, Paulo Bernardo, and Arne Engels all into the one team at the same time? You don't. It's as simple as that. Callum McGregor's never going to lose his place in the midfield as a captain. He may come off later in games, and just to keep his fitness levels and not to get burned out as the season goes through. But the positional change will come in with Arnie and the other two, Paulo Bernardo and Rio Hatate. And then you've got Odin Ohm that's kicking around that midfield. I mean, he's going to feel aggravated that this young guy just comes in, this young Belgian comes in after playing in German football and walks straight into the team. And Odin Ohm was a player that was going to be the next big thing in midfield, but that's never come to fruition. So it'll be an interesting season to see how he performs. Maybe he will be one that steps up to the mark, a bit like what Liam Scales did a few years ago. It's going to be interesting. I mean, we are only this weekend will take us 5 games into the league, but what it does do is we have a fantastic squad going forward. Finally, looks like we've got a strong bench again. I think towards the end of the last season, there was a lot of people complaining about, God, you're having to rely on James Forrest. The fact that we're having to rely on James Forrest, what is he, 15 years into his Celtic career, and he's at 500 games. That says a lot for James Forrest, but it also says the lack of conviction and motivation and yeah, for the rest of the wingers that were there last season. Anyway, Post Job Express says Engels made his debut, didn't he, last week for the Belgian team. They must think he's got something. Yes, he did that. I never watched the game, but he did make his international debut. Evening from the Philippines, and Hail Hail Stevens says, Jock coming in from the Philippines. That's a play. My missus has got work colleagues that are based in the Philippines, and it's a place that I would love to go to. Maddie Bonnie is in the house, even from Australia. Australia, mate. Even from Australia, mate. All right. I love it. Pot Job Express says if anyone plays well at Champions League games, they're bound to be interested. Playing well in the SPL won't mean anything. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Do you think that's what made Matt O'Reilly? I mean, we know that the Spanish came in with an £18 million offer for him as soon as the Champions League was finished for us, but they didn't rate him at 30 million. They didn't rate him at 30 million, did they? They only rated him 18 million plus add-ons to go to 20 million. So I think it's the English market that is the overinflated market. Michael Ross is in the house. He'll the champions. Richard Smith, Alistair Johnson could end up being a £40 million player. There's a dark horse that we never even thought about. Coming from behind and the way up the wing without even raising an eyebrow. £40 million for Alistair Johnston. Can he take his game to that level? He's going to have to do it in the Champions League then for him to get such a big price tag, I think. Is he better than Joseph Juranovic? Spanish measures that are like Irish drinks at home. Yes, they are that. Poach up stress, El Miguel, hope you're well, but. His rating on FIFA isn't great, says Leon Miles. Jesus God. Morning Baz and all the Celtic fans, says George. Hank says, or a best troops and Stephen. Dave Hislop says, what will be the score against the puddle drinkers tomorrow? I'm going for 5-0. The puddle drinkers and the toilet drinkers. We'd had this conversation last night, and a lot of people were saying I went for 4-0 tomorrow. I think that Celtic are going to score a barrel load of goals against that lot. Could it be the game that ultimately gets their manager the sack? I doubt it, but I want them to stay I mean, I've made it clear, I want them to be as far down that table as possible. And Kilmarnock and Hearts, I want those two to be fighting it for relegation. For relegation come the end of the season. Yeah, says top 10 was 50 million in Saudi Arabia last month, apparently. Brown Warrior says, look, will be the dark horse. There's something we've never even spoke about. The £1 million signing from Dundee. Can he outshine? Can he outshine the Paulo Bernardos, the Arne Engels, and the Rio Hatate in the Celtic midfield? Now that would be a story to tell. That would be a rag to riches story from being only 4 years ago, being a lifeguard in a swimming pool to getting a £1 million move to Celtic to then outshining £11 million players at Celtic to become an absolute rock in the middle of that midfield. Can you Luke do that at 26-year-old? He is a little bit older, but he's got the motivation. And that motivation sometimes can be all that you need. You know, motivation and hard work can, 9 times out of 10, motivation and hard work can outrun talent. Someone might have better talent than you, but if you put in that hard work and if you've got that motivation, you never know, can you? Do you? You never know. There's one to watch this season also. That's the one I never even thought about. Bernardo has the class, said Richard. Yes, he does have the class. But does he have that want? Does he want it as much as Luke? And there's a question that the manager will put down. Like, who wants this the most? Do you know, we're going to see in this documentary that's coming out, the behind the scenes conversations, the motivation speeches that Brendan Rodgers gives to the team and to the players, and one of them to the players that are fighting for positions in that midfield. Who wants it the most? Which one of you guys wants it the most? And that's going to make sure that the likes of Luke is going to go, do you know what? I'm just as good to be in this team as Arnie Engels, who cost 11 million. And I'm going to prove that to the manager. And I'm going to work my ass off to prove it to the manager. That's sometimes, you know, you can have all the talent in the world, but sometimes if you've got that little bit of extra niggling motivation and work ethic, you can sometimes get in front. Anyway, move on. We Are the Champions says, or our own Port Shop Express says, anyone seen Lanky lately? He's not been seen since his birthday. Hope he's not fallen off the wagon. I haven't actually. I'll message him later. I'll message him later and see how he is. Joseph says we have real potential in the squad and players ready to take it to the next level. We do that. Noodles says, hey, well, Baz and Hoops all around the world. John says, we aren't having to rely on James Forrest. If we can rely on him, that's what matters and makes him great. Yes, Paul Baird says, it's good that we have competition for places and that the team can only help Celtic. That's true. That is very, very true. Now getting a better squad. So Hill Baz says, Hank. Portugal Express says, bigger eyes in the Champions League bag. Everyone watches it. Yeah, there is bigger eyes in the Champions League. And it'll be interesting to see the squad rotation in the Champions League, or if Brendan goes out and changes players for certain games. That'll be interesting. Can't wait for the Champions League to start, and it starts next Wednesday. Yes, it starts next Wednesday. Is it next Wednesday or is it Tuesday? I can't even remember. Where's my calendar? Anyway, I've probably got it wrong. It's probably Tuesday. It's this start next week. Anyway, David says, morning, Baz, boys and girls. Bernardo could easily be a £40 million player. By the time he leaves us. 4-0 Hoops on Saturday, 4-0 tomorrow. Our team is ready for the Champions League, Baz, do you think? Is our team ready for the Champions League? It has to be. Brendan Rodgers, when you look at the tactical changes, I'm going to put a fan on. The window. The sun's just turned up the heat. When you look at it, I think that why is it not giving you the viewer activity? Stream analytics. Brendan Rodgers has made a few tactical changes in doubling up on players in the SPFL. They are only doing that because he wants to drum in a system of playing and a system of when the other team has the ball, double up on them and get the ball back off them as soon as they can. All the top teams do that. All the top teams do it. Brendan Rodgers is finally changing the way that he plays a bit. I've never heard anyone this season go, oh, it's bone Brendan ball, side to side, passing pish. We've not heard that this season. And we heard that a lot at the beginning of last season. And it seems that Brendan has evolved as a manager. And he said it himself. He's matured as a manager. He's a lot calmer as a manager. And he thinks about things a lot better. Paul Baird will hate me saying this because he still wants Brendan out. But as the manager has evolved and as his tactics have evolved also, there's probably no better time to go into the Champions League and test them. And Brendan will be wanting to make sure that we can get some kind of results. And I've said it, I mean, we all know what the results I want. I think we need to get at least 3 wins. So are they ready for the Champions League, George? Well, there's not going to be any better time to find out than next week. Paul Baird, great point. Saying it's good that we have competition for places, and that can only help Celtic. It is, and it's good competition for a change. It's not project players. It's good competition. It's quality players. We've finally got the board bringing in quality rather than a mass amount of project players. The project players have pretty much sounded like Paul Lambert there. The project players have pretty much left the building, and to a certain extent. But you could say Arne Engels is a project player. He's just an £11 million project player. Do you know? So it's where they are in their development that Celtic are now looking at and where they could potentially go. It's where Celtic were bringing in £1 and £2 million players, maybe hoping if you can get one of their two of them to go for 10 million, that's a good bit of profit. But I think now Celtic are now looking at the bigger stage when it comes to footballers and in the hope that they can, there's a lot. I think the way that Celtic are probably thinking about it, right, is God, that golfer was upset. When Virgil van Dijk was sold for 75 million, and Celtic got absolute pittance compared to the 75 million that he was sold for. I think Celtic have now stepped back with the whole business plan side of it and went, right, if we can get these players in at 10, 11 million, ultimately, what is the price bracket? What is the price bracket that these players can potentially go to? And Celtic will want to make sure that they maximise that as much as possible. Getting 30 million for Matt O'Reilly was a fantastic piece of business. I mean, it was 26 million up front and then the rest in add-ons. But I mean, when we got 25 million for Jota, we're like, oh, it's Saudi money. It's Saudi money. We're never going to be able to do that again. Well, we did. And we did more than that. We did more than that. Celtic have sat down and went, look, but no longer are we going to be priced on the league. We're not going to allow our players to go on the cheap just because they play in Scotland. Just because they play in Scotland, you're no longer going to get players that have got the potential to go to 50, 60, 70 million. You're not going to get them on the cheap. You're going to get them at the current market value. What's up in mine? But anyway, Cameron Carpet Slippers. I think Carter Vickers will be the next big sale. Baz says Brown Warrior. I don't think so. I think Cameron Carter Vickers is going to be here for about 3 or 4 years. You got to remember he signed that new contract last summer. I don't think so. I've got a funny feeling that Cameron Carter Vickers is going to be here for a while. Going to be here for a while. Hearts and Killie relegated, Ayr promoted. That's my dream. This says AR. Champions League, Champions League, Champions League. If we get more for one player than the Zombies' whole squads. Can we get? Yes, of course we can, Paul. Can my coffee tastes funny, says Carly. There you go. Paul D says, I think that's how we have signed Trusty. To tell the truth, I think CCV might be a 20 million plus player next summer. I don't know. I think that they've signed Trusty so that they've got a back two that really understands each other. I don't think that they've got him in to then because or maybe they think that they're going to get a big offer for Cameron Carter Vickers. There was offers for Cameron Carter Vickers this year, and Celtic flatly turned them down. So maybe they know that there is a time scale on, and maybe Cameron Carter Vickers does go next year. I'll be devastated if he does, but if Trusty comes in and does a job, and then if Mark Nabrowski can even turn up and take Cameron Carter Vickers' place, well, you never know what the future holds. Pork Chop Express says, Brown Warrior says, I think Calmac will take Luke under his wing and push him on big time, Baz. Can Luke progress more as a player will be the big question. Can he progress? I mean, it's more than apparent that he does have talent. The young lad, he's not young. He's 26, but he is young. He's only 26. That's young. Let's not say that 26 isn't young because it's young. We'd all love to be 26 again. Getting pure mad with it. No, I wasn't actually. I was settled down by the time I was 26, unfortunately. But yeah, I think the gauntlet has been thrown down to look to see if he can outshine some of the superstars, what you would call superstars of the squad. Bernardo is the player to watch this year, definitely. He will win most of our games. He'll help Stephen Johnson. Um, I've put my heating on. My heating on. Not a fan. It's got to be 30 degrees here today again. That just tell you what winds us up. But anyway, the question was, and there's been 131 votes this morning already, is do you think that Celtic will ever get £40 million for a player after Owen Hargreaves has been in the media saying that he's loving what Celtic are doing. He's loving what Celtic are doing with buying in players and making them better and punting them on for good money. And he reckons that Arne Engels will be a smash hit after he impressed Brendan Rodgers and even himself. He says, yeah, it could be because of inflation. Everything goes up, but you see it everywhere. So why would it not happen in football? Brendan knows his stuff. He's not going to miss it with Engels. He says they've invested at a level of money in him. Celtic have done a good job in transfers previously. Look at the Japanese market; they've done well in that. They find little niches. Also think that learning to play at a club like Celtic is really amazing because of the history of the football club. It is exceptional, says Owen Hargreaves. Yes, a club that goes back to 1888 of unbroken history and a lot of trophies along the way. You get an experienced manager like Brendan Rodgers. You couldn't dream of anything more as a young kid. You have it all going in your favour. He says, when you look what happened to Virgil van Dijk, if you go play someone else, then Celtic, they will look to cash in and reinvest. The scouting has to be good. You have young guys to go to places. The demands on them are massive. They're top level demands. And you'll need that mentality if you want to make it to the top of the game. I think it's nothing but positive with Arne Engels going to Celtic and getting that winning mentality, says Owen Hargreaves. Brendan Rodgers will be judged on the Champions League this season. Any less than 10 points will be failure, in Paul's opinion. Well, that's about the points that I reckon Celtic will need to go for, because if you're going to go for 3 wins at home, that gives you 9 points, and 1 draw away, that'll give you the 10 points that Paul has said that is a minimum. I think that that would be a fantastic season, personally, for Celtic. I think it's all about progression. It's all about where the team sees themselves being in the hierarchy of football. And the new format should help the manager. There is no must-win games. There's no, we've had it pretty good with the miniature league that we're in within the bigger league in the Champions League this year. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and let's just hope that we get off to a winning start next week. Paul D says the Huns keep shouting about investment. It's so funny. I read a comment this morning that not even a sugar daddy would be able to get them to match us now. I think we're that far in front of them now. It's going to be all about Celtic. And maybe that's a talk for another video. It's all about Celtic. And we know what's happened at Celtic before, but maybe we've had a change of heart, and especially this season, going out and buying 11 million for a player. Maybe the Celtic hierarchy are not going to take the foot off the pedal like they have done before. There isn't the managed decline that I think if you look at last season, I would think that when Brendan Rodgers came in, I would put that down as a season of managed decline, because the wages went down, the squad players might have went up, the amount of players that we had might have went up, but it was prospect players, and that's the way that they manage the decline. They're still winning the league, but their wages expenses are a lot less. So the profitability is a lot more. That's you can look at it as it's a great way of running the business, but in football terms, it's managed decline. But we managed it. But we're back this season with a vengeance, and I don't think a sugar daddy coming in with 200 million it would take, I reckon, for them to even be level with us. Notice the Burns have turned on Butland. Oh, Jesus, that's even better. That's going to be fun this weekend. Rodgers needs to be more pragmatic in the Champions League, especially away from home. Michael, I think you're going to see that. I've said it. When you've got him doubling up on players in the SBFL, when you've got the team doing that, that's with the Champions League in mind. That's with the Champions League in mind, and not getting overrun, not being left one on one. It's helping your mate out, like doubling up on a player, trying to slow the game down in their half. And I think that it's going to be an interesting one. Baz went and got his fan. I went and brought my best mate. Both go fannies on our side. Oh, Jesus. Butland's the new Tavernier. Yeah, there we go. Selling percentage is bigger now. Yeah, we're now looking at 20 or 30% selling clauses. Exactly. So that's what I mean, Brown Warrior. If Celtic are going to be making any kind of money at all on players, the transfers have to be way more inflated than what they have. Anyway, the question that is on the poll this morning is: do you think that Celtic will ever get 40 million for a player? 76% say yes. 24% say no. 24% say no this morning. Anyway. Let's remember that we've got 25 million for Kieran Tierney, says Paul Baird, thrown that into the mix. And that was a good few years ago. And that was about 5 years ago now, wasn't it? And it was 2019, wasn't it? When you look at that, I mean, 40 million for players now. You're seeing players down in England, pretty much average players going for 40 million. So I think that Celtic can do it. And Poach Up says, CZV will get bored soon. Will Cameron Carter Vickers get bored soon? I don't think so. You've got to remember that Cameron Carter Vickers was passed for pillar to post by Spurs, and he was put out. There was about 6 teams he'd been out on loan at before he came to Celtic. Do you know? And sometimes you just find your home in football, and I think Cameron Carter Vickers is one of those players. Will he get bored playing in the Champions League? If you leave Celtic and you don't go to a top 4 club in England, you don't go to a top 3 club in Spain and Italy and Germany, you're not going to be playing in Champions League football, are you? So I think Cameron Vickers is can you say he's cut of the same cloth as Scott Brown? And sometimes you know where you're better off. Sometimes you know where you're better off. Anyway, we'll see. Ibrox, who cares? Where carers go to die. We'll get £40 million eventually, lol. That's true. My heating is on full bung. My brother sent me a thing yesterday morning and said it was only 5 degrees on the site he was on. Anyway, yo, Kaiser's awake. No talk about alcohol or drugs this morning, Kaiser. Like you did last night. Baz and Phil Timms would definitely be a couple of years and sell player for 40 million plus. I don't think it's going to be a big CCV. He's going anywhere soon, and building the defence around him. Luke is a Celtic fan, so he will have his nose to the grindstone from day one. And he also wants to make our club better. That's how James has done it for 500 games. Profit on either, you're joking. A profit on either? Who said a profit on Adam either? Nobody this morning has been talking about Adam either, Danny boy. Not that I've noticed. Happy Friday, said Lorna. Carly says, Danny, 10 million profit on Adam. Easy. Easy. I'm not too sure about that one. I'm not too sure. I think Norwich got us a cracker with that one. Anyway. I didn't reel the poll properly. Hank, crack and batter. Lorna says, hail, hail. Vickers lives Scotland. Yes, it does that. Brown spot on Baz. You provide, you can bring players in that don't affect your own performance levels, provided that you can bring players in that don't affect your performance. Yeah, that's true. I don't think you'll get bored winning. No, I don't think that players don't get bored winning. I mean, if you think about it, guys are still on it, Baz. Jesus God, man. Uh, Either to score tomorrow. Adam either to score tomorrow. CZV is their captain in waiting, says Tam Cairns. That's an interesting one. Is Cameron Carter Vickers the captain in waiting? Hmm. Or would it be Luke? Don't know. Don't know. You don't know. Morning, Baz, and all the Tims around the world, especially Stephen Johnson. I've never seen Stephen on this morning. Huh? And in order to get 40 million, and then they've got to be 10 times better than Tierney, Jota, and Matt O'Reilly, surely, says Robert. Well, no, the way that Owen Hargreaves was talking about, he's talking about the fact that inflation, everything's going up. If you look at the fact that Celtic got £30 million total deal, including the sell-ons, we've got to remember we've got a 20% sell-on. So any 20% of the 11 million, anything above the 11 million, 20% of that will go straight back to Germany. So you're talking in the region for Celtic to make a decent amount of profit off it. You're going to have to sell them for 25, 30. You're going to have to sell them for 30 million plus to make a decent profit off the player, considering his wages and everything. But Owen Hargreaves is saying basically the way that inflation is going, the way that Brendan Rodgers can turn players' careers around. And we give Brendan Rodgers a lot of stick, but you've got to remember, Brendan Rodgers turned a few players into world stars at Liverpool. You know, that crazy South American. Anyway, I'm going to finish up the poll, and I've been on the poll's been on for ages. Only been 100. There's been 837 people on the live. There's 272 currently on, but there's only been 175 people voted. But it's pretty unanimous. 76% saying yes, 24% saying no. So I'm going to end the poll in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the poll is: do you think that Celtic will ever get 40 million for a player? 75% say yes, 24% said no, 178 votes have been completed. Every player that was signed from outside Scotland is brought with a view to develop and sell on. The sooner you get that into your head, the better. I've never said anything other than that. We all know that that's the way that it's going to happen. But sometimes you get a player. Oh, wait a minute here. Not every player. Because look how long that Tom Roderick was at the club. Tom Roderick was at the club for a lot of years. Sometimes players come in for abroad and stay at the club for 5, 6, 7 years. So, I'm not sure, Brown Warrior. They're not all brought in to develop and sell on. Just saying. Anyway, the Dons are coming, says Tom. The Dons are coming. Oh, I hope they are. That's wait a minute. I still can't see the fucking Rangers. Larson, exactly. Larson stayed for 7 years. He had the chance to go to Manchester United for 15 million, and he turned it down. Why do you want to sell anybody? To be honest, the team are doing well. Big Cameron Vickers is going nowhere. Yep, I said there wasn't a timeline, so it could be 40 million in 100 years. Says lies. It's on my bucket list to visit your home, John. And Brown Warrior says, does anyone seriously think that Carter Vickers to accept that the SPFL is his level? He wasn't at Spurs and the USA national squad. He wanted to make it in the EPL. But why? And why? Lots of teams, there was about 6 teams had him on loan in England before he came to Celtic. And he'll not forget that as a player. You'll not forget that. You don't forget that. It's as a player, you remember all these teams that didn't think that you were good enough. And then you found yourself at Celtic and you're playing in the Champions League and you're thinking, where am I going to go that's bigger than this? Realistically, where am I going to go that's bigger than this? Anyway, God bless, the sesh is waiting. Tom Roderick won a competition by Nike to make it as a pro as well. There you go. Paradise Point says, morning, Lorna. We're going to pump the Hearts this weekend. The Dons are saying that the Rangers are coming. Yep. Yeah, the Dons are now going, can you see them? I can't if I can see them either. What would be an ideal finish to the season for me is for the Zombies to finish around about sixth or seventh in the league, and then Kilmarnock and Hearts to go down. Cameron Carter Vickers is content at Celtic, says Paul Beard. Yes, he is that. Short career, money, Baz. That's what the players want to go to England. Why didn't Scott Brown go to England? Why didn't James Forrest go to England? Why didn't Callum McGregor go to England? You know, there's always a flip side to that. There is always a flip side to it. If you're getting paid a couple of £1 million a year by Celtic, fair enough. You can go and get paid 5 million a year down in England, but do you know, for every player that has left Celtic, how many of them have regretted it? How many of them regretted it? Scott Brown used to say that. Scott Brown used to say it all the time. The amount of times that he's had players WhatsApp him and said, "Bruni, you were right. I shouldn't have left. I chased the money. My careers went down the pan." You know, so chasing the money. I mean, wait and watch Mikey Johnson's career from now on. Right, there you go. In Tenerife this week, looking forward to the Hoops Bar tomorrow and watching the Celtic pump the Junior Hunts, the Castle for Foreigners. Get down early, Coco. I would recommend a couple of hours before to get a good seat. Yes, and the Hoops Bar in Tenerife is a place that I'm hoping to be next year, maybe. Anyway. That's us done and dusted for this morning. Been on for 40 minutes. It's way longer than we're normally on at this time of day. Cameron Carter Vickers has trusty to talk American with, so smart move by Celtic. Yes, I think so also. Big shout out to everyone that has commented this morning. They're Scottish Baz. So, they're football players. They're football players. Anyway. Yeah, right. It was a great wedding in Dundee. Well, there you go. Let me see if there's any more Celtic news kicking around before we end the video this morning. There is not much kicking about. It'll all be We'll all be waiting on Brendan Rodgers' interview this afternoon with the media. Is the Arne Engels investment could pay off as a record transfer? Is what the headlines are. They're all going with that headline now, or the Celtic sites and everybody else. Anyway, that's it. There's nothing. Mateus, how's that coming up again? I wonder if Celtic can go back in for him in the next window. Right, read that one. Anyway, on that note, have an absolutely fantastic day, Celtic fans. We are on 18,842 subscribers. We're trying to get to 18,888, and then we'll take a screenshot of it because ultimately we want to get to 20,000 subscribers before the end of the year. That would be a fantastic end of the year for me. And on that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.